Come to think of it, when I came across this video of this witch on worshiping many gods, it shows how some people out in the world today just think of worshiping God as optional, something they think is just another hobby or something like that. But what this witch is actually admitting, if you listen closely, is that she's talking about worshiping multiple demons instead of the one true God. That's the real message she's pushing here. Try and listen to this for a moment.
So as a pagan, there is technically no limit to the amount of gods you can worship. You can technically worship every god if you wanted to, but honestly, I don't think that's practical. I think as a pagan, you should pick a couple gods to worship and really devote yourself to and kind of, respect the others, leave offerings to the others. But I think you just like with the reality of being a human being and the amount of hours in the day, I don't think it's possible to have a proper devotional relationship to every god. I think everyone has a limit, and that limit does vary person to person. For some people, they can be devoted to 10 gods. For some people, it's only one or two. It's just what's up to you and what makes sense for you, but don't feel like you have to worship more gods. Even if you're a pagan and you just worship one god, that's totally okay and acceptable. So just find what works for you. But whatever gods you worship, make sure you can give them the proper energy and time to be their devotee.
And this clip of the witch really reminds me of something Father Winston once told me when I asked him why witches, occultists, and devil worshippers have to make sacrifices to their demons.
In occultism, the spirits that you conjure, in order to conjure them, you need always an offering. And the higher kind of power you ask from them, the higher the requirement for the offering. It is not you who decides what is to be offered to them. It is they that ask for it. So blood sacrifices are not of the same categories. You can have animal sacrifices, and not all animal sacrifices are acceptable. So if here in the Philippines, things that are offered oftentimes are first and foremost chicken. Then higher than chicken, you have goats. We don't have sheep, so goats. Then higher than goats, you can have pigs. Higher than pigs, you can have cows. And then higher than them, have human sacrifice. So depending on who you will convoke or who you will conjure. So the higher the spirit, the higher the sacrifice. Why do they do this? They want power. The Catechism of the Catholic Church really tells us about that, the danger of conciliating spirits, meaning of controlling them. And for occult practitioners, they think, and for us, we understand this is the demons themselves tell them this, that in order to be able to control them, you need to be able to perform certain required rituals, and every ritual would require a sacrifice. And the higher the sacrifice, the more expected the power to be given. So why do Satanists, why do this cartel lords, like for example in Mexico, they found there certain implements of witchcraft, black magic, etc. Because according to even Father Gabriel Amor and Father Joseph Sophia, that there are three things that are often connected about evil. First and foremost, it has to do something with lechery. Lechery is uncontrolled sex. So anything that is connected with sex. And then you have drug abuse, especially because drugs tend to alter consciousness. And when you have the mind altering drugs, then the evil spirits are able to control you more because you lose your sense of clarity. Evil spirits are chaotic. Evil spirits have no logic. So they work on chaos. And therefore, when your mind is altered, you lose your will and you lose your intellect. So they're able to control you more. You cannot resist them. And the third is that there's always the concept of sacrifice. So they're always connected together. That sex, drugs, and sacrifice. So you cannot, it's not only true for these cartel things, but it's also true for the pagan sacrifices of old and even of the present. We have these things. For us Christians, you will see that for you and me, the supreme sacrifice is Jesus Christ himself. There's no other higher sacrifice. And therefore, any sacrifice that is offered to God other than the sacrifice of his only begotten Son does not have any meaning. Any other blood sacrifice, one was saying, Father, when our ancestors were offering animal sacrifices, is it not offering given to God? No, I said no. You have to understand when witch doctors or whatever offer blood sacrifices, it's to appease a particular spirit that may be claiming ownership of a particular place. So it's idolatrous worship because you're offering it to that spirit. You're not offering it to God. You're not offering it to the one true God. And even if you offer animal sacrifice to God, to the one true God, that is still unacceptable because the supreme sacrifice has already been done by his Son. And therefore, all other animal sacrifice, even human sacrifice, does not have meaning because the supreme sacrifice has already been offered. So that is the thing there.
And one of the clips I often share with you when it comes to these witches is this clip of Father Reehil.
Pray that they come into the light because they're being deceived. Monsignor Rossetti just had a guest on one of his, he has these sort of Zoom calls with many exorcists. And we learned from some of the people that came on, and there was a gentleman who came on who was a Satanist. And he gave his testimony and said, you know, whenever you make a contract with the devil, and that happens anytime you ask for a favor, you ask for something. And that's what the witches are doing. They're saying, please give us this. They always take something from you, and it's always much more than what they gave you. And so he finally realized, I'm being crushed by these demons because I keep asking for these things. And he had to get out. So you want her to come to the knowledge that this is not what it was ascribed to be. It was a deception. It looked like something that would be good, and she bought into it, but let her know the reality. This is evil, and she shouldn't be doing it. And hopefully she can get out without being too beat up, because getting out is hard once you go in. So pray for protection over her as well. And yourself. If you're going to be praying for a witch to convert, you, too, better have protection.
Now, I'm sure for some or many out there, this isn't a subject that they're comfortable talking about. But as Father Reehil said it before,
and death being the first is an event shrouded in great mystery, because we don't understand what's going to happen completely.
But there's a story shared by an ER doctor that I'm really curious to know what you think of it. Listen to this.
Several years ago when I was in residency, I was rotating through the ICU, and we got a gentleman who was admitted to the ICU in critical condition. Now, he's not a good man. He had done some heinous things and was on the run from police when he crashed his vehicle at a high rate of speed. He was admitted to the ICU with several critical injuries, and he was intubated on a ventilator and completely unresponsive. I would go in to see him every single day and do my exam and my assessment, try to get a response from him. Really wasn't getting anywhere. The attending would come in after me and do his own exam and assessment of him as well. Although his lab seemed to be improving, his imaging studies were improving, he really wasn't getting any better or waking up. After about a week, I went in and did my exam. There wasn't much response. The attending came in after me, and the attending listened to my presentation of the patient, and then he did something he hadn't done prior to this. I remember he tapped the patient on the knee, and he said, "Mr. Garcia, it's your choice. You can stay like this forever, or you can wake up." The next day when I went in to see him, he was actually starting to wake up, but he really wasn't talking. Over the course of the next couple of days, we were able to take out the breathing tube. He still wasn't really talking to us, although he is completely conscious and aware and following commands. On about the third day after we took out the breathing tube, I went in and did my assessment and tried to talk to him. He really wasn't talking to me. And then when I turned to leave his bedside and walk out of the room, he grabbed my arm, kind of startled me. I turned around and I said, "Mr. Garcia, are you okay?" And he said, "Doc, how long have I been here?" I said, "You've been here about a week and a half." Over the course of the next couple of days, he started to tell me his story. He said, "Doctor, I remember everything. I remember the crash. And when I crashed, suddenly there was nothing, complete silence, and there was total darkness. It was as if I was floating in midair and not going in any direction." He said I would cry out for help, but nothing would happen. And then one day, it completely changed. He said he started to feel the most intense pain he's ever felt throughout his entire body. And it was nonstop and relentless. He said the silence turned into screams, shouts, and torment. He said the pain was completely unbearable, and he would yell and scream constantly for help. He would say, "Please help me, please save me." He was completely shocked that it had only been a week, because to him it felt like it had been a year. And he said finally, after screaming for help over and over and over, something different happened. He said one day, he said, "Please help me." And he heard a voice, and the voice said, "You can stay like this forever, or you can wake up." He said, "I want to live. I want to live. Please help me. Wake up, wake up." And suddenly, just like that, all the pain was gone. The screams were gone. The yells were gone. And he was back into that darkness. And the darkness started to fade away. And he could see and he could open his eyes. He said he didn't feel like the same person that was in that accident. And he didn't know what it meant, but he knew something changed within him.
Although the doctor isn't sharing a story of someone who died, but that conversion he talked about in the end reminded me of this story I've already shared with all of you before. Listen to this again.
The patron saint of confessors, Saint Jean Vianney, who had a case where a mother, depressed, wanting to die, approached him because her son committed suicide, jumping off a bridge. Okay, now, if a person commits suicide by jumping off a bridge or is under the influence of drugs, which mitigates their deliberation and therefore actions, it doesn't mean they're lost for eternity. Before the Second Vatican Council, I want to make sure I say this right. No, it wasn't before the Second Vatican Council. It was after the Second Vatican Council. A few years thereafter, the Church made a law that reversed its previous law. The previous law was no one who committed suicide could be buried in a Catholic cemetery. And then shortly after the Second Vatican Council, it allowed that. Why? And for good reason. Because only God sees what's going on inside a person when they take their life. Not everyone who commits suicide is lost. So Saint Jean Vianney, the patron of confessors, was approached by a desperate woman, a mother of a son who had killed himself. And she said, "I have no more reason to live. Why is God keeping me here? I think my son is in hell." Now, this was at the time when late, 1700s, when people were thinking that suicides are a straight ticket to hell. So she was convinced her son's in hell. And he told her, "I will pray." When he saw her again, he said, "Your son was saved." God revealed it to him that from the moment he jumped to the moment he died, he converted, he repented for what he had done. You see, sometimes an act of suicide is impulsive. It's not always premeditated. It's not planned in advance. And there's a lot of duress that accompanies it, and therefore lack of deliberation, lack of premeditation. And therefore, God sees these mitigating factors that we don't see. So here in a case like this with Jean Vianney, who lived from like the 1700s to the 1800s, was in a time when suicide was considered taboo completely. It still is, but we understand now that some people make mistakes even at the moment of death like that, and God can save that soul even at the moment of death with their repentance. Yeah.
And there's also another clip I want to share with you again, just because we're already on the subject.
But Faustina tells us in the Diary of Divine Mercy that even in these sudden death moments, or these acts of God's justice, which you mentioned, the soul still has time to convert. You say, wait a minute, they died suddenly, how could they have a time to convert? Faustina says that even after the soul has been separated from the body, God gives it a moment to choose, even after its physical death. She says it sees two doors. One goes to heaven, one goes to hell. And in that moment, it has the freedom to choose between the two. So now that's a whole another theological answer I can provide you with, based on the teachings of Bernardine of Siena, Doctor of the Church, on how is the soul able to make that choice if it's been living a life of continuous sinfulness, selfishness, and selfishness. Bernardine of Siena gives the answer to that.
For the last clip that I want to share with you in this video will be this one from Father Carlos Martins, and I hope all of you have learned something useful from the video so far. Listen to this.
The end of one's life is when the greatest battle occurs for that person's soul. I have been around the dying a lot, as have many priests, any priest, and occasionally there is a manifestation of, in the case of those who lived a good life, a deceased relative appears, or they exclaim, I'm seeing my dead mother here, and my dead aunt, or my child that died in infancy, or an image of a saint. In the case of those who lived a mixed life, or who lived an evil life, there is often a manifestation of evil. And these are not perfect either-or situations. To saints, to great holy people, even if they're not saints that the church eventually will canonize, but could be, evil can often appear to them as well. But the point being that those situations reveal the cosmic battle that is happening for someone's soul. And so the devil is coming in that moment to lay a claim to the person's eternity. And that is the point where, friends, we need to dispense everything the church has to dispense for people in those situations. Sacramental grace is fundamentally important to strengthen people in those moments.
Well, I guess that is all for the video this time. Again, thanks so much for your time spent here with us, and hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this one.